Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very empowering show coming right up. Our first guest today is Erin Dooley, and she's here to talk to us about her new movie, Broken and Beautiful. Now, Erin started screenwriting at the age of 24 and has made her directorial debut with the award-winning film Broken and Beautiful. And she founded Dash Entertainment in 2010 to produce her feature and short films. So let's welcome to the show, Erin.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
It is such a joy to have you here. And gosh, we were talking to you not that long ago about your last movie, and here you have another award-winning movie.
Yes, I have another one coming out. Just keep producing.
You're staying busy. So yeah. This next one is called Broken and Beautiful, right?
Yes.
And I love the subtitle. We are all sinners, but we are called to be saints. So why don't you share with us a little bit about the movie and just how this all came to being?
Yeah, well, it is a Christian musical, and I love Christian music. That's the type of music that I primarily listen to. And when I wrote it, I had a pretty long commute. I was going an hour each way to work, and so most of my time was spent listening to Christian music on the radio. And I'd always wanted to write a musical, and finally, when I heard some of these stories that didn't seem to have their resolution in those 3 or 4 minutes, like, usually the song ends, with a happy ending kind of, but I sort of noticed that the songs I was hearing were more about people struggling and a little bit more real and authentic. And so as I kept hearing these songs, I would make stories connecting different songs that I would hear. And so this story just kind of came to me, and there's 5 different storylines that interweave. It's kind of, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Crash, or just any ensemble movie, but they all know each other. They all attend the same church, and they have different struggles that they're dealing with, infidelity or some addiction. So everyone's got a lot of things going on in their life as they're, dealing with each other. And so I produced it in Chicago, and then I took it into film festivals for a year, won some awards, and then now I'm going to be taking it around the country on a one-night-only screening tour in 10 select cities, and then it'll be available online and on DVD as well.
Yeah, well, and I know, you say you won some awards, you're so gracious, but I think this one, it was 6 or 7 awards? I'm not quite sure.
It was nominated for some, and then it did win Best Feature at a Christian Film Festival. It was nominated for Best Faith-Based Feature. So, yeah, wow. It was nice to have that. But for me as a filmmaker, of course, yes, everyone likes awards, but the connection with the audience is always my favorite part of it. And there was a gentleman that came up to me after a screening at a film festival, and his first words are, "Well, I'm an atheist." And I'm thinking, okay, this will be an interesting conversation, because he sounded a little gruff. But then he followed up and he said, "I disagree with you probably on everything, but this is a very well-done movie, and I think it would start conversations," and he wanted to show it at his film festival. So I took that as a very high compliment, because it's not something that is just, hopefully for me, I don't want to just, preach to the choir, as it were, and, have the same kind of sort of talking points that everyone always has, just to come at things a little bit differently, and so that we can actually listen to each other. And you might not agree with somebody, but at least if you can dialogue, I'm not going to change in my beliefs, but at least, to understand things and be able to talk to somebody else, I think, is very needed in our world. So to have somebody say that that was his takeaway was very gratifying.
Well, I think having a greater understanding, and regardless where people are, is always something that we're looking for, to have that open dialogue. And regardless what the belief is, obviously you had a man who was an atheist that came and saw your movie, and, he's talking about how just beautifully it was all done. You've done such a phenomenal job on that, so kudos to you. So how did you come to the whole, come to even making this movie? I know you said the music was kind of moving you, but what inspired you to create this movie?
The music really was so central to it. And then I'm primarily a writer, and that's what I had been doing I hadn't really produced up until this point, and I was going for a run after I had written it, and I was praying. I was like, okay, God, what's going to happen? Who am I going to sell this to distribute it, or to make it and then distribute it? And I really felt called by God to do it myself, and I kept having confirmations of that call through different people, so I kept a journal of all of those moments, because I would pray about something one day, and then really the next day I would speak to somebody and they would answer that question, and it wasn't like I'd led them to, bring up something in conversation. They would just out of the blue say something or do something. So it's pretty remarkable, and it really deepened my faith. And so alongside this book, alongside the movie, I'm releasing a book called "You Want Me to Do What, God?" So it's because I'm always very casual a little bit with God, and so it has that tone through the book. But it's really about when God calls you to do something that really pushes you beyond what you think you're capable of. How do you respond, and what does it look like to follow God's will in your life when it could be a very big leap of faith? So for me to go from just a writer trying to have other people produce my stuff to then produce this is a big film. It's a 2-hour film. There are 12 leads. We filmed at 22 locations throughout the city of Chicago. There's 23 songs in this that I had to license. So it's a big undertaking for anybody, particularly for a first film. And so it just kept motivating me because I truly felt called that I needed to make this film. And now to release it, I'm super excited to have people see it.
Oh, well, it's phenomenal, and it's just coming out in a few weeks, so how exciting is that? So, and you picked a certain day for this to come out on.
I did, because it does deal with, it talks about people dealing with their struggles, so I thought, what better time than Lent, when people are, might be a little bit more introspective and reflecting on things in their life. So it comes out on Ash Wednesday, online and on DVD, and then the next day is when I start the tour. I'll be starting in Pasadena. So Ash Wednesday is a little joke, I guess, from God. It's on Valentine's Day, and so it's for Catholics, we have to fast, so nobody can go out to a big fancy dinner for Valentine's Day. But,
well, that's okay. There's always other days.
Right. So, and then I'll be doing the 10 cities. I'm really hoping that people will have these discussions, go out with their friends afterwards and talk about the themes in the movie. And, think during Lent is just a really good time to take a look at your life. Yeah.
Pasadena, what a great place to start, So you've got a countrywide tour that you're doing. You're going to be in Texas and Florida and Tennessee and New York and Pennsylvania and Maine. So you've got all these great places that people can go and see the movie and be a part of it. And so if they're not at a local theater, they can purchase the movie too, right?
Yes, they will be able to buy the film online and also the soundtrack. And then and that actually comes out before the theater run, just the day before. But and then they can buy, and it's bundled. So if they want to buy the soundtrack as well as the book, and there's a little bit of savings if they buy all 3 items. And then there is going to be the option also to rent it online, so people can watch it for a 3-day rental if they're interested in just instead of buying a DVD. So there's different options depending on how people like to get their content.
So without giving it away, why don't you share with us a little bit, give us a little teaser about what Broken and Beautiful is all about?
Yeah, there are, as I mentioned, there's 5 storylines, and there's the main character. I mean, they're all, it's ensemble, but one character really kind of touches most of the storylines. She's new to the church, and she has kind of a dark past, and she's trying to, I guess, recreate herself and find if she is, loved by God from what she's done before. And so she is trying to kind of run from her past, and there's a couple who are kind of barely making ends meet, and they are not seeing each other, and so that, looks at the marriage, the difficulty in marriage when you're not only have financial strife, but also just, you don't see your partner. And then another couple is, they are two dealing with, not lining up together. And that has a little bit of an addiction in that storyline. Mm-hmm.
Which is really relevant to today. I mean, you look at, the opiate, addiction, and there's so many people that are being touched by that. So I think it's such a great thing that you also are talking about addiction in one, shape or form in your movie as well.
Yeah, and they're really pretty hard-hitting issues that it deals with. It touches on pornography and just a lot of meaty topics. But again, I'm trying to come at them from a different way and to say, well, this is a person who's doing it in this way. Again, not those regular talking points where people don't even hear each other, because I think if you've heard or seen the same narrative, then you stop listening because you automatically are like, oh, well, then I'm just going to say this because that's the canned response to that. But to have, to see somebody living through a struggle in a different way that people might not have seen, not have understood how that struggle affects somebody in a different way. Yeah, and it's a little bit difficult because a lot of this, without giving away spoilers about what is going on, because it's sort of, there's a lot of build up to when then everything, there's pretty much like one night where everybody, just is at their lowest, and everything's kind of been opened up and everybody sees what the other person is dealing with. Yeah, it's all the truth with love, and, try to write it very charitably. So hopefully it'll, again, just spark some conversations.
Well, it's so interesting because we never really know the journey that anyone else is taking, regardless of what they look like on the outside,
Right. Yeah, definitely. I don't know what somebody is dealing with. And when I give talks with my other film, and the thing that I have learned over the years is that people act out of hurt and fear. And, we did that when we put up these walls, a lot of that is out of those emotions. And so you can definitely see that as well in the film, as people are, because who wants to put out their baggage and be like, this is the really rotten thing that I'm dealing with. Nobody likes to put that out there for other people to see. It's easier to shine the light on what other people are doing wrong. So there's definitely some of that in the film as well.
Yeah. So when you were doing the casting for, because you have a huge group of actors and actresses that have been on this movie. So how did you cast these people? Were there just actors that you knew and worked with before, or how did that all come together?
It's a pretty big mix of how I found them. Some of them were connections of connections, and when I was casting, I was a little bit newer to the film scene in Chicago. The lead actress who plays Jenna, Julie Hurt, I actually met her at a writers group. I was the Chicago Screenwriters Group, and they would bring actors to read like the first 5 or 8 pages. And so she was one of the actresses that would read through people's scripts. And I just thought she was phenomenal. I was like, I need to work with her. So I went up to her afterwards, and, we talked, and we have since worked on 3 more projects. So we, definitely get along, and I think she's a wonderful actress. So she was she still technically auditioned, but she was definitely tops on my list before the audition. And then I did, put out casting throughout Chicago and held auditions. And, it was an interesting process because I remember some of the roles the smaller roles, like supporting roles, would have so many people applying for them, and then some of the more key roles didn't have anybody who was interesting. But it's a very diverse, and I specifically, cast it to have diversity. So each storyline basically has people, a lot of different races and different ages. So I definitely hoping that people will identify with something. They'll see themselves in some character. Some of it might be just on the surface they see somebody that looks like them, but then, what they're dealing with, hopefully, somebody would see something that might help them as they're dealing with things.
Kind of move discussions forward in regards to any kind of troubles or things they're going through. And I love how you have selected the crew, the cast for the show. They have they're just it's a really good mix, and that's kind of what America's all about. When we go through our neighborhoods, it's a mix of great people. So I love how you've mirrored that in your movie.
Yeah, and that's just kind of how I grew up, and a lot of my family, there's different, there's a couple, interracial marriages and things, so I just see that, and that's what reflected in my world. So, yeah, and especially now living in Los Angeles, it's definitely wanted something to reflect that back, because that is the world that we live in, and so it's almost, it was purposeful, but part of it's like, it doesn't need to be like this main focus, because to me, it's just this is how we are, and everybody should be reflected in media, and it shouldn't be like, this type of a film or this type of a film, with different races, but hopefully everybody would be reflected in them. So that attracts me to films. And a lot of these ensemble ones, I know part of it, because I tend to write ensembles a lot. And I think it's because I come from a big family, so I can keep track of a lot of people, and I like kind of that, just that world of a lot of people, overlapping stories and all of that. But I remember in my writers group that I'd always be like, there's a lot of people here. I'm like, okay, so keep track of them all. I don't know what to tell you. So it's just
we'd add a few more, and yeah, well, and that's so great that you're able to do that, because not all writers are able to write for so many different overlays, and you've done that perfectly with this movie.
Yeah, and it was interesting to work with the different actors, and to be just if there were certain nuances of, because I am a white woman, so, writing, characters that are from different ethnicities and races, to say, okay, well, if you wanted to say things in a different way, if it would really reflect, if you, just because I do like to have the actors, put their stamp on it as well, and it's really a beautiful part of the process is when you see this character that just is a figment of your imagination taking shape. And so definitely had a lot of very candid conversations with people about, so that it really would reflect. It's not just, the token, like United Colors of Benetton ad or something, where it's just there to say, oh, look, we're doing this. No, to really, to be authentic with it.
Yeah, and to see that kind of come through. Now, when you were during your creative process, was there anything that kind of surprised you as you were, creating this movie?
Well, it started very differently than it ended up, so that, I guess, was a big surprise. There's a storyline where there's a couple and they have 2 children, and the son was at the very initial genesis of this idea. He was going to be the main character, and that's a storyline that does deal with pornography, and it was going to be more focused on a young person's. But then I switched. But as I researched that issue and realized how, the trickle, anything that happens, it affects people in a multitude of ways. Each person involved in something is going to be affected in a different way. So then I switched it, and then once I was going to come at that topic from different ways, how do the parents react? How would that affect, just when you start thinking about, asking yourself questions about things like that, then it became this ensemble, and then it did shift to he's a supporting character. So it was interesting to kind of let the story take over and to say to have the story drive it and say what's the most important thing that the story is wanting to say, and then let whichever character would be better to show and say that, bubble up kind of to be a more major character. So it was interesting to see how that all, came out, because, when you're a writer, you definitely are, coming up with the ideas, but at a certain point, sometimes the characters tell you things that you didn't know, and as an actor, you're thinking about, or as a writer, you're asking questions, and they're getting answered by the characters in a way. So it's not that we writers think that we have all the answers. We just have a lot of questions, and we're trying to get to the answers, and our characters can help us get the answers. So it was an interesting process for that part of it.
Yeah, it sounds like it had a really good flow, because you're going one way with a main character initially, and then it kind of pivoted over because there was another portion of the story that's coming up that's just that's stronger in general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then that opened it up to say, all right, well then, what else? What other issues are people dealing with? Let's just make this about a couple of things. Because that really kind of gave me permission to add some more people, and then see how the different dynamics, like we said earlier, as you're dealing with one thing, we might have this friendship, and I don't know what you're dealing with behind closed doors, and you don't know mine, but we still have this dynamic, and as things might get revealed, we're trying to help each other, or maybe even just call each other out. So it was interesting to be able to, not just have it one-dimensional, but to have these characters that have a lot of emotions going on and a lot of stuff, and how do they deal with each other with that?
Well, you've talked about Jenna, the one character that kind of really was shining, and you had to, she of course auditioned, but you had to have her as the I think she's the lead character, Julie. Mm-hmm. So, what other character kind of stood out like that as well? She definitely she is the one that connects all of the stories. But it really is great when the actors do take on each one and really, take ownership of that, and you see a little bit of nuance. There's, but they're all, it's kind of like when you're a parrot, I don't know, like which is your favorite? Which kid is your favorite? Like, yeah, I did kind of put you on the spot there, didn't I? I'm sorry.
You can't really say that.
You're like, I love them all. I love them all. Well, so why don't we pivot over to, Broken and Beautiful. So how did you come up with the title of the movie?
Well, there is a song that's called Broken and Beautiful. It's not in the film, but I had gone through a couple of different titles, a lot of them based on songs, and then I settled on this because I really just thought that encapsulated the message of the film. You see all of these broken people, but we all are made in the image of God, so we all are made beautiful. And there's a song, Better Than a Hallelujah, by, Amy Grant is the one that sort of made it popular. And so when that song is sung, it really talks about how, of course, God loves our praise and adoration and all of this, but when we're brought to our knees and we just kind of give ourselves over in our brokenness to God, that, as the song says, that can be better than a hallelujah to Him. And so I just really love that idea that we are, God is going to love us, and if we just, keep going back to Him, even if we make these mistakes. And obviously, my other film that we've talked about before is about forgiveness. And so that idea, that theme is just sort of in my life, I think, that wanting to let people know that there is forgiveness and that there is redemption. And so it doesn't matter how broken you are, you can always turn back, and that there is beauty. I guess I'm also this eternal optimist, and I see the good in people, sometimes maybe to a fault, but I definitely see that I think people are inherently good. And, so it goes back again to the tagline that we're all sinners, but we're called to be saints. We all should be striving for the good and the beautiful. And, we're going to get it wrong. But a lot of people throughout history, a lot of the greatest saints got it wrong too, but they kept striving and they kept going. And so that is really what I'm hoping that people will also take away, that that it's never too late. You have your whole life to continue to strive to show the beautiful more than, to overcome your brokenness. But it's okay to be broken, that we all are, and it's just continuing to get past that brokenness.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting when we start in this journey of personal transformation, a lot of times people are looking to move beyond those hurts and pains that they have from the past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you really, I was actually just heard it on the radio yesterday, that when people try to be so happy that if they don't allow themselves to be sad or just acknowledge some emotion that's, on the negative side of things, that it actually makes matters worse. And so not that you have to wallow in those negative feelings, but really to acknowledge them, that they, we all have these two sides to the same coin in our lives. And so we have to allow those feelings and just always, of course, not let it overcome you, but to know that it is okay that, if you make a mistake, but it's always that striving, the whole mantra of, you might fall 7 times, but you get up 8. So.
Mm-hmm. That's so important, because a lot of times people feel like, gosh, you get to a point in life and things are just so bad that there's nowhere to turn. And that's not the case.
Yeah, and I think that's, exactly that, that despondency, and where you really think that it's hopeless, or that you're out, that this message is for everybody else. And it's like, no, it is for you. And that, it breaks my heart when, to hear when people have that level of, either that depression or that despondency where they can't, see themselves beyond it. So hopefully there is the hope in the end, that we can overcome our demons, and you can get past it.
Is that the number one thing you kind of want the audience to take away from this movie?
I think that, the more talking with you, I think, as that's coming out, it seems like it. I think those two things, that people won't feel like they are outside of God's view because they've done something. Because you just, talk to a lot of people just through my life, and especially now, being a speaker. And it really, it's very heartbreaking that somebody would think, I'm the worst person. That's a good idea that maybe God loves everybody, but he can't possibly love me because I did this thing, and I don't even want to tell anybody because it's so terrible. And it's like, wow, maybe you did a bad thing, but you still are loved, and you can still have redemption. And so I guess that idea really, I would hope that people would cling to, and see that, they can have redemption.
Yeah, it kind of comes back to, just, everyone can be forgiven and everyone deserves love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is definitely kind of I think it's a good mantra to live by. So, well, and so where do you see, you've got this great tour coming up, and people, they could go to the website, brokenandbeautifulmovie.com, to see where they can see the movie in person. And then what other things do you have on your plate? I'm sure you're so busy with just rolling the movie out.
That's pretty well consuming my life right now. It's getting this movie out, and it's going to be really exciting because in some of the theaters are pretty big, so they'll be able to accommodate everybody who wants to see the movie. Dallas is a huge theater, and that's really exciting because it's going to be at the Texas Theater. It's a very historic theater. And
great.
So I'm excited there. And so I'll be partnering with a couple of different local Christian radio stations. Been talking to them in the past couple of days, and really making this a big event, and advertising on the radio to get their listeners to come see the movie. So it'll be exciting. And really, when I'm at the theater, I mean, there's really nothing better as a creator when the lights go down in a theater and basically everybody's just walking through your imagination. None of this would happen if I just, if I didn't have this imagination and this happened. So it's a very unique feeling. I'm sure any creative, any medium, feels that, but it's something special when you can be sitting right next to somebody in a theater, and it's like somebody's taking my brain and putting it, projecting it on the screen. It's interesting. So I'm very excited to see the people, meet the people at all of the screenings, and then we'll see. I'm not sure because this is going to take me through mid-March. The last screening in Boston is on March 12th. And so we'll see what is after that. And I am going to be doing in the various cities. So most places be there for 2 nights. So I already have booked some screenings of my film A Way to Forgiveness as well. So I'll be giving talks on forgiveness. I'll be in the same cities. So I have one in Dallas set up, and trying to book a few more. So that's exciting too, to have both of these projects. Since, they're very different. The one was a documentary and this is a narrative, but again, that underlying theme of like forgiveness and redemption kind of is, I guess, my worldview and what I want to put out there in the world. So it's nice to have both of these projects out there. So, and then once March hits, I'll definitely take a few days off and have a break after all of this flying around our country. But then we'll see. I have a couple of ideas, but nothing that's in any solid form to announce. But so if
there's a church that's that's along the path that the movie is going to be played, where you're doing the release, are you going to be having, if they contact you, would you have like a special showing at their church or something?
For A Way to Forgiveness, not for Broken and Beautiful. It's just going to be in the theaters. But, I did post the cities and dates that I still have open for A Way to Forgiveness for that documentary.
That's great.
So that's an option. I'm still, booking those dates. But, after the tour, it will just be the DVDs. Because with the music licenses, it's a little bit more...
A little different,
I suppose. Yeah, that there's just the 10 screenings. I can't do more, and then it's just selling it on DVD and renting online at brokenandbeautifulmovie.com.
Oh, that's definitely the place to go. And so you talked that you have some other projects that you're working with some of these actors with on other projects. So what's after you go through March and you're able to settle down a little bit, what's on the plate for you next?
I did film another movie back in Chicago. I'm not sure. That one, it needs more money to finish it up, so I'm not sure if that one will get finished. There's a couple of things that are just question marks of maybe I'll do that. And then I do have a half-hour comedy that I'm going to write. So there's a couple of different projects. A reality show idea that, but not always like have to feel like I have to couch when I say a reality show, because it's not like, just not
a normal day reality show.
Yeah, like it would be one more along the lines of, to me, like an intervention. Like if you've ever watched that show, it's something that's going to help people. I mean, that's what I do with my art. With being a filmmaker, I want to help people, and so it has definitely a slant about that. So if I could, make that happen after this, then that's an option that's definitely, on the
sounds like, your work is just, it just sounds like your work is all about making that positive impact,
Yeah, I really, because I definitely feel like this is a calling. It's not just a career for me that I, and there's, look, I watch kind of like the popcorn movies, if you will, things that are just there to entertain. And so there's definitely a place in the market for that. I consume that. I enjoy it. But for me, yeah, that's for sure how I want to make film, something that's going to make somebody think, something that's going to let people know about something they might not have known about before, or just help them. And especially really, I mean, when you can meet an audience member and they tell you how your work has impacted them, I mean, there's nothing, I don't know, there's nothing that can really compare with it to have somebody be impacted by what you did. I'm sure you get that a lot with your show, being able to showcase a lot of things and to bring some interesting things to people's mind that, it's nice when you can have positivity, because there's a lot of negativity in the world, and I just, want to help combat that.
Well, and it's interesting because people find their inspiration in so many different places. It could be this movie, it could be the other one that you did that you mentioned. Why don't you say the name of that one again? I don't have it right in front of me.
Oh yeah, A Way to Forgiveness. A
Way to Forgiveness. That was a fabulous one. Love that. So, it's interesting just the different things that move people, to kind of realizing that, life's going to get better and it's going to get easier, or, there's a way out, and there's hope. At the very least, there's hope,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think hope is it's a very important thing to have, and not just to say it but to really, feel that you have hope. I just can't remember the exact wording, but I just was reading, like a devotional thing about hope, and just that really can carry you on, that if you can have that deep-seated hope in life in general, and just that whatever you're dealing with, if you are going through a valley, that you're going to get up to a peak at some point. So hope is definitely a very powerful thing that hopefully people can find and cling to.
Yeah. Well, and you talked about, to kind of get back to the characters, I know I'm kind of moving around here a bit, but just was kind of occurring to me. So with a lot of times we put our own experiences or troubles, or maybe of those that we know that are around us, like family members or what have you, we'll incorporate those into our stories. And was it that way with this movie, or did you just take the different challenges that were happening with these different characters based off of just kind of what, as a society we're being faced with today?
It was mostly societal and looking, and things that I am, passionate about, that I think are basically ills in our society, and that I hope people could strive to get beyond, if that is something that they're dealing with. Some things took on meaning afterwards, but without getting too personal, but
I don't want you to share too much, but it's just, I always find it interesting because when we look at inspiration and just where it comes from, a lot of times it could be a lot of times if I see something on TV, like a family that's going through a difficult time, I mean, it becomes a personal story for me. You want to do what you can to help them,
Yeah. But, I think, and I wanted to show, a variety of different types of people going through different things. And some of it's like nuance, like, the one couple is the wealthy couple in the parish that is always, they go to them like, oh, can you, donate for this? Because nobody's donating, but you have the money, so you should just do it. So some things aren't necessarily the big issues that you might think about, but it's still, so what is somebody called to do with their wealth? And, what is appropriate to put upon somebody just because, they might have more than other people. Just, some nuances in there.
I think that's fabulous to do that, because it really kind of calls to questions, A lot of times when we're looking for meaning in life or to leave a legacy behind, it's when you talked about like these different families that are going through different situations and how it affects the family members, but it works the same way. When something positive happens, it affects everyone around them as well.
Yeah, definitely. Nothing happens in a vacuum, good or bad, for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, and so I know you mentioned it briefly. Why don't you share again where people can learn more about Broken and Beautiful, and also about all the other projects that you do?
Yeah, the website for the film is brokenandbeautifulmovie.com, and it does list all the cities that I'll be going to. As I mentioned, starting in Pasadena, then I'm going to Orange County, California, and then I hit the road, go to Dallas, then Florida, and then Memphis. One of the actresses lives in Memphis, so definitely wanted to go to her town. And then I'm going to Nashville, which is the seat of Christian music, so that'll be exciting to go there.
Yeah.
And hopefully some of the songwriters will be able to attend. I have invited some of them. They're just, it's a little far out for some people, but so that'll be exciting. And then going back to Chicago, which is where it was filmed, so there'll be the different cast and crew members there, and of course then all of our families can see it, so that'll be exciting. And then to New York, Philadelphia, and Boston. So those are the 10 cities. And there's some behind-the-scenes stuff that's on the website, different videos and some pictures, which I think can be a lot of fun for people to see. And then again, can buy the movie or rent it on February 14th. And then if they're interested in other films that I've made, it's -entertainmentllc.com. So they can link to...
Dash spelled out, right? D-A-S-H.
Yes, D-A-S-H, entertainmentllc.com. There is a link on the Broken and Beautiful page to that. And so they could find out about A Way to Forgiveness, which is a 45-minute documentary. And then there's there's a web series, a couple web series that I've done, some short films. Those are all free to watch on my website. So if you really want to get hooked on what I've done, you can. It's all on my website. So.
Well, we obviously are. I mean, this is the second time we've had you on the show. The first time we talked about your trip, on the was it the Camino de Santiago?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, what an extraordinary journey that was. And so I was so excited to hear about this new movie. I'm so glad we've been able to spend this time. Erin, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to speak to you.
Yes, you too. And of course, everyone wants to go out, and if you can't make it to one of the local showings of Broken and Beautiful, you want to go ahead and pick up your own DVD of the movie. So we are going to pause here for a quick break, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 1-2-3 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
Do you know that you can become a genius at any age? Do you know that you can change your life and create a brilliant life for yourself? Hi, I am Olympia LaPointe, an award-winning rocket scientist who you more than likely have seen on TED Talks, Impact Theory, and PBS. Check out my latest book, Answers Unleashed, The Science of Unleashing Your Brain's Power. Simply go to answersunleashed.com books and check it out for yourself. You'll find the tools to help you create the life you've always wanted.
The highly acclaimed and newly released book, The Hand Part 2 by Lynn Van Praagh Grattan, describes the journey between a psychic medium and a family who lost a son. Messages from Beyond Eternity's Gate is of love and healing. For more information, visit www.lynnvanpraagh-grattan.com. That's www.lynnvanpraagh-grattan.com.
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted to be introducing our next guest, Ira Pastor, and he's here today to talk to us about strategies for living longer. Now, Ira is the CEO of Bioquark and has over 30 years' experience across multiple sectors of the pharmaceutical industry. He's also a board member of RegenerAge, which is a clinical company that focuses on applications for regenerative and rejuvenating healthcare interventions. He's a member of the Executive Council of the World Academy of Medical Sciences and a member of the World Economic Forum's Human Enhancement Council. So let's welcome to the show, Ira.
Thanks for having me, Marianne.
It is such a pleasure to have you here. My goodness, you're such a brilliant person. I love the work that you're doing with Bioquark.
Well, thank you. It was pretty exciting set of activities, so we're excited to talk about it.
Oh, yeah. Well, and so, I always love to talk about, how did you even get started on this path in working with Bioquark?
Yeah, well, it was really a combination of things. I like to joke that, growing up, I was a big fan of science fiction movies and comic books, and I always, whether it was superheroes, people that were traveling around the galaxy, I always was very interested in sort of human biologic exceptionalism and how we could get to that stage. On top of that, I always had such a profound respect for the natural world. I had come up in the pharmaceutical industry at an early age with a father that was a pharmacist, and when I went to pharmacy school, they still taught a few semesters of a discipline known as pharmacognosy, which is sort of the study of natural products. And so I really wanted to put it all together because, we live on a planet right now where, we see ourselves at the top of this food chain, but, at the end of the day, there are many organisms out there from a health and wellness perspective are sort of much further advanced than we are as human beings. For example, there are many organisms, the amphibians come to mind, that can replace lost or damaged organs and tissues that are identical to the original ones throughout their lifetime. And this, obviously many people are aware of the ability to regenerate the spinal cord, but organisms like salamanders and newts can regenerate limbs, hearts, eyeballs, and even large parts of the brain. Simultaneously, many of these species have incredible ability to sort of turn back damage, genetic damage when it occurs. And, diseases like cancer, which is, a horrible disease that, wipes out 8 million of us every year, but, there's some species in nature that shrug cancer off like it was the common cold. At the end of the spectrum, of course, you have organisms that don't age. You have some that age in reverse, and you even have some that technically even die and are reborn. Needless to say, we are very weak when it comes to accomplishing any of these things as humans. So, ultimately, our mission was to go back to nature and sort of go back to what, evolution in the last 3+ billion years has created on this planet and sort of study it again. And look for the clues and look for the opportunities that we maybe have missed for the last 100 years. And so that's sort of the genesis of it all.
it sounds like, it's just something that's really driven you as far as, a line of work that you can tell that you're passionate about it. And it's always great when we have people who are passionate about what they do. And you can see by the work that you do, just with the interviews that I've listened to that you've done and the articles that you've written, that you really are bringing to light more about how people can view biotechnology and just, how we can live longer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of technology and the future. But, one thing I like to point out is I'm also very interested in the past. And, we have to remember that there is a long history of biomedical research that, unfortunately, it doesn't get covered up, but it just gets forgotten because, this is an expensive area. And not everything that is exciting and, in the lab, sees the light of day. And so one of the things we really find interesting in going back and studying some of these things, for example, cancer in many little organisms is a simple disease. Unlike us, which pound away at it with chemotherapy and radiation and some of the newer smart drugs, many of the low organisms in cancer that are resistant and resilient to dying from cancer don't try to kill it. They, in essence, turn it into normal tissue, which is really a fascinating thing when you think about it. Just like you wouldn't cut out part of your brain if you found out you had Alzheimer's disease, or cut out the pancreas if you have diabetes. The concept of the kill of that, it's been the basis of the war on cancer for the last 50 years. And so, you look at nature, you go back into the literature, and you realize some of the things that we knew, when back in the 1930s and 1940s, when we were first even studying carcinogenic substances on amphibians, which, got tumors and developed cancer, but then just got rid of it. And now in the 21st century, in 2018, we're going back and, now we get it, because we have a deeper understanding with many of the tools we have in front of us to understand, what it means to reverse a disease state. And in essence, cure something, how nature does it, as opposed to just treat it. And my father and my mother both had cancer. And it's just one of those things that, nature has solutions. For the first 100 years or so, we looked in certain directions in the pharmaceutical industry. Now there are new opportunities, and that's really what I'm, driven by and passionate to sort of uncover these and can get a new sort of 21st century, 2018 look, as opposed to sort of the old.
Mm-hmm. And how that moves. And so you talk about that. Do you think it's possible at some point that we'll be able to reverse the cellular changes, as far as cancer is concerned?
Absolutely. And this is, essentially, this is something we have known as a scientific community since the 1940s. Even here, I live in Philadelphia, and, in the 1970s here at University of Pennsylvania, the discovery was made not just on how regenerating organisms can revert cancer, but how mammalian embryos do. There's these wild experiments that were done here in Philadelphia, basically taking an embryo, not a human embryo, of course, but mammalian, and stuffing it full of cancer cells. And when the baby was born, whether it was the rat or the guinea pig or a rabbit, like a cat, it was cancer-free. So we've known about this dynamic. Now we have to sort of come up with solutions, biotechnology solutions, to stimulate or reawaken that possibility. And I think we're right on the cusp of it. Not just for cancer, because remember, the majority of all diseases that have some cellular damage component, whether it's genetic or epigenetic, with small changes that occur on top of the genome, that feeds into literally trillions of dollars of the healthcare system. So we really have the ability, if we can master sort of this, going from state B of damage back to state A and starting over again, to address a lot of sort of the chronic diseases that are responsible for our suffering, degeneration, and death. So we're pretty excited that we'll see a lot of exciting things happening in the next 5 to 10 years in this time.
Well, it sounds like that you've done a lot of research in regards to lower organisms versus human, and the differences as far as regenerating and the ability to regenerate. How does that, I know you also talk about in some of the other discussions you've had in regards to regenerating body parts that like lower organisms can. Do you think at some point that's going to be a feature for us as well?
Absolutely, and this has been sort of the early focus of our company in the sense that there is a common thread between sort of the erasing of disease and regeneration, and it is basically when you study the limb of the salamander, or you study the head of the planarian worm, which can be chopped off only to regrow. When you study these dynamics, it's all, once again, about taking the cells that remain, turning them back in time, and then pushing them forward along a development path so it forms that new limb, that new spinal column, that new heart that is missing. And so, we can take clues from nature and how it's done, and also follow the similar processes in humans. Now, these events do, interestingly enough, occur in humans at one point in time. And that is after all of us are formed in our mother's wombs. So that very brief period of time when the egg is first fertilized, all of these dynamics happen. So, this is why our children are born aged 0. They are not born with the chronic diseases of old age. You don't have a baby ever born with Alzheimer's disease. And it's the reason why most babies are born with 2 arms, 2 legs, and fingers and toes and so forth. So we have clues to take from both of these situations, understanding the dynamic of what it means to turn back time and start a process over to replace something that's missing. What we're going to have to do a little differently, and I come out of the pharmaceutical industry originally, so big pharma, which has spent the last 100 years sort of looking for what we used to call the silver, the magic silver bullet. The pharmaceutical industry loves things that are simple chemicals that you put in little pills and you dispense at the local pharmacy. To do something that's complex, or to initiate something that's complex, like regeneration of a limb or a large part of the brain, requires more than a single magic bullet. It's going to take interventions that are more complex in terms of what is ultimately given to the patient. So you're not going to be able to do it with a single pill ever, but it may be combinations of substances that stimulate deprogramming and stimulate the growth, that kill off dead tissues, and are about all the activities that we see when we look at the regeneration of the salamander limb, and which comes back in 2 weeks after you chop it off. So there's a lot to learn, and because, although those are amphibians and we're humans, we have to remember that what we found out 20 years ago when we were studying the human genome and we first started to decipher it was that we're not much different. There's very little difference in terms of the actual gene. There's differences in the way they're controlled, which is sort of where we're focusing, but there's a lot of similarity, and so we can take those learnings and apply them for the development of therapeutics.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I find that so fascinating because, here we are, each of us are, billions of cells, and they all seem to know exactly what they're supposed to do at the exact time. And so when we come across things such as cancer or, maybe any other kind of disease that comes up like that, you think the body has a way of also being able to repair itself in some way.
Yeah, we do. We do have, in essence, we really have 3 major forms of repair as humans. We have, the typical physiological turnover in the body, so things like blood and skin and hair. We have, in one place only, the human liver. We have some hypertrophic regeneration. In essence, if you lose a certain amount of the liver, the rest of it will try to increase in size and cell number to take on some activities. And then we have probably what's the most important, and that is wound healing. And this is sort of where the evolutionary people will tell you that things went not bad, of course, but when we developed a very complex circulatory system that we have, and we became bleeders, in essence, we bleed very rapidly as a species, and we die very rapidly from the loss of blood, we had to also develop a very powerful wound healing response, including scar and plaque formation. This is sort of the balance. So we gave up complex regeneration for wound healing. That's fine. We need wound healing. But yes, so we do have these nascent regenerative abilities, and we have some DNA repair that goes on quietly in the background. Even though we're sitting here talking over the next 30 minutes, we're repairing DNA constantly throughout the day. But it's the next level that we're talking about. So, but I think we can get there. And the one thing we have to avoid, and this has sort of been for my time in big pharma, is this sort of reductionism where we keep going deeper and deeper and looking for the small stuff, the genes. The genes are very important, but as you were just pointing out, when you have an organism or a person like you or me that's made of 50 trillion cells, and everything happens in perfect synchronicity, and it's really amazing how it all goes on. The genes aren't responsible for it. The genes are just controllers, holders of information. And there are many levels above the genes that make sure that everything is coming along as it should, as an integrated 50 trillion cell organism. And this is a fascinating area in its own right, and it's something that we really need to get back to, because we've been pretty good at looking at small things, sort of the micro level of stuff, but our genes hold information, but they don't really say how Marianne-pestana or Ira Pastor becomes who we are. There's higher levels of control of those genes in a really complex system, the area of systems biology, which is where we're going to find a lot of those answers. So we're very excited about the macro level in addition to what's happening at the level.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad that you explained that, because a lot of times when we get into science, and there's so much that's going on with science right now, there's so much development that's happening, a lot of times it can get a little confusing. It's like, well, there are the genes, and then we've got the whole cellular thing going on, and how is this all coming together? And so a lot of times when people think about using science to not only heal the body but live longer, it can get a little confusing. And I'm so glad that you're here to not only share your wisdom and insights in regards to this topic with us, but to kind of just, let us know of all the great things that are happening with this. And, of course, we'll have to have you back on another time. One of the questions I have is, it takes a little bit longer for people who say they're a little bit up in age to heal versus people who are a little bit younger. Why is that? Why does that happen?
That primarily happens because of the exhaustion of the stem cell niches in the skin. We all possess remainders, or the adult stem cell populations in various parts of our bodies, primarily in the ones that turn over rapidly. So think blood, think skin, epithelial layer of the gut. We do not have huge populations of stem cells in the tissues that do not turn over. So, our brain is not turning over constantly like blood. Our heart is not turning over constantly. But we have reservoirs of those stem cells as well, not huge though. So in the skin, yes, you have this problem of so-called stem cell niche exhaustion, and that is just a function of the sort of the epigenetic and the genetic changes that occur over decades of life, and sort of this, I call it evolutionary balance. But there is, unfortunately, and this is a debate that goes on in the aging or anti-aging life extension community of whether there is a program behind that is sort of said, say, okay, we do not need to maintain those stem cells at age 70 as well as we did at age 50, just as an example. That is a debate. We have our feet in both areas. We understand that evolution chugs away for 3+ billion years now, so undoubtedly there are sort of reasons why, we do not have a robust stem cell niche at 70, but that's primarily what it has to do with. There are other endogenous factors that get involved, such as inflammation, radiation, oxidation, some of the typical stuff that you hear about in terms of external damaging factors, but sort of the endogenous, sort of cellular-based component would be the exhaustion of the niche of stem cells in that area of the body. And it's an important, one other thing I just want to mention along those lines, we forget the skin is the largest organ in our body. It is full of miles of blood vessels and nerves and billions of pores and corpuscles and on and on. It is not just a sheet of cells covering us. It is an integral sort of biomechanical organ that trickles down to everything else we do. But it's a very important organ to maintain and take care of. But just daily moisturization or feeding it right or staying out of the sun, it's more than just a barrier. I'll do that.
Well, and so when you talk about, basically the regeneration process, does the telomeres have a portion to play in that? Was that what you were just explaining? When the telomeres get a little bit shorter, it's kind of, it has something to do with, just the aging process in general?
Yeah, telomeres are an exciting area of, exploration nowadays. The ends of the chromosomes, in essence, they control the sort of unwinding and stability of the chromosomes. And when over time the cells divide, they get short, and there becomes more of a looseness to the chromosome structure. The debate is still in the area of telomeres is, do they cause aging or are they a sign of aging? And it's one of those debates, just like, in cancer. Do mutations cause cancer, or are they just permissive of it to happen? Needless to say, they're important. However, telomeres are just one part of the genome. And just like they become shorter and chromosomes become wobbly and loose, you still have 25,000 protein-coding genes within that genome that are also being damaged and unfolded and bound to by strange chemicals, the epigenetic changes. So it's definitely one part of the big cellular damage picture, and are important to at least to know about and to sort of continue to study in this industry.
Well, and so I know with your company, Bioquark, you guys are doing a lot of research in regards to people living longer. Can the work that you're doing there really help people, not only live longer, but repair their cellular damage?
Yes, that's a very key part to what we're doing, sort of the cleanup of the genome, the erasure of the damage, whether that's in the case of the genetic problems, the cancer, the fibrotic diseases, the autoimmune diseases, or whether it is in turning back time and reprogramming the degenerative diseases, your Alzheimer's, your Parkinson's, congestive heart failure, and so forth. So, yes, we basically, we don't really position ourselves too much as a anti-aging company per se. Anti-aging and age reversal is going to be a trickle-down event of everything we do, just because whether it's your liver, your kidneys, your spinal cord, your heart, your brain, we are going to be making it genetically and epigenetically younger in the process of regeneration and repair. So it's sort of like a side effect. It's a good side effect. And that's one of the things we've seen in our own gerontological studies, where we've basically taken healthy animals for years and just dosed them, and seeing a 70% increase in lifespan, just sort of naturally in terms of sort of long-term toxicological studies that we're doing to see what happens if we're continually sort of stimulating the regenerative cycle in a mammal. So we see some promising results there, and it's clearly we're not rats, but the fact that we can see those initial steps is exciting for the possibilities that can anti-aging side effects from these types of interventions. So it's a nice piece of it.
Well, I'm sure a lot of people are going to be watching what your company does regardless, just because of the profound effects it has overall, even though how you're saying it's the trickle-down effect in regards to, anti-aging, which the longevity factor is such a big deal. What are some of the kind of things that are holding your company back, or some of the biggest challenges that you guys are having today?
One of the main issue, and this is really an issue as much today as when it comes down the line to sort of larger pivotal clinical studies, which can cost hundreds of millions of dollars. But the concept of a cure versus a treatment. I know they sound very similar, but the pharmaceutical industry is very used to creating treatments. So they like hitting the outputs of our diseases. They want to stop the inflammation from your osteoarthritis, as an example. But inflammation is not osteoarthritis. It is a symptom of it. They want to stop the immune response in your psoriasis. But that is not your psoriasis. That is a symptom of the psoriasis. So the ability to move from a treatment mindset to a cure mindset, where you're basically eliminating the disease entirely, is definitely, it's not a barrier, because they're going to have to go this way anyhow. But sort of getting that thinking moving in an industry that is focused solely on treatment for the last 100 years, with the exception of the antibiotics, which is sort of the only curative intervention we've really ever created. And so, people say, well, cure and treatment are pretty much, they kind of sound similar. They're very different things. And I make the analogy, it's not like asking, Ford or Mercedes or Toyota to, stop making internal combustion engines and make electric cars. It would be like asking Ford or Mercedes or Toyota to, stop making cars entirely and make, a flying device like in the Jetsons, or a sidewalk that moves or something. So it requires much different thinking. But like a lot of stuff in big pharma, especially now, when some of these companies are really struggling in terms of, where their next $2 billion product is going to come from to make Wall Street happy, they're going to have to change too. So I think that's one of the major hurdles, especially because big pharma, the top 9 players that are out there still represent about $200 billion of R&D money. So it's important. They still need to be partners of ours for phase 3 clinical studies down the road. And it's just a matter of, in the next 5-10 years, really convincing them you got to do a lot more of this type of work versus what you've been doing.
Yeah. Well, and I can imagine, just because, research takes so much money, and I'm sure that, you guys are probably having to really, have a lot of companies either that are donating money, or you have grants that are kind of keeping things moving.
Yeah, I've been through all the different parts of the system and throughout my career, in terms of traditional debt financing and life science private equity. Bioquark, luckily, just from connections over the last few decades, is so far funded by private investors. But ultimately, drug development is a couple billion dollar endeavor. So clearly, we will have to feed into the traditional system at some point. But right now, things are moving nicely and not struggling.
Well, that's good to hear, because we love the work that you're doing. And what do you see kind of on the forefront of, just where you're going as a company now? Any new projects that you can share? Or I'm sure you probably have something that probably some you can share and some you can't.
Yeah, we're pretty open with regard to what we have going on. I mean, one of the most exciting things that we recently got involved in was the area of, what's best described as sort of reverse gene therapy. The audience is familiar with sort of the current dynamic in sort of gene therapy and gene editing, the ability to fix a damaged gene that may be mutated. So we're talking about the 6,000 to 8,000 different genetic diseases that affect about 350 million people worldwide. There are no cures or treatments for these diseases today via the conventional path because they're just much more, when it comes to having to fix a gene and 50 trillion cells. That's a big issue. And what you mainly see is the gene therapy business moving very slowly, and some of the treatments that are coming out, in the news last week, over $1 million a pop. This is out of control. And so one of the things we are looking at is sort of the reverse. When you have a genetic disease, interestingly enough, most people think that every one of your 50 trillion cells has that damaged gene. It's not the case. The truth is that you are a mosaic of cells, some which are mutated and some which are not. And the reason this is true is because throughout your life, as the cells grow, accidents happen that reverse mutation. So we see the dynamic of somatic reversion or changes in many genetic diseases. What we think a very interesting path in, something we're starting to explore, is not how you correct a gene in all the damaged cells. It's how you increase the population of normal cells, which can outcompete the mutated cells and kill them off. We see this in nature in many diseases, and we think it might be a much more practical approach as opposed to trying to engineer every cell in the body, and much less expensive, because you'd be using traditional technology, traditional drugs, and biologics as opposed to things that cost $1 million a shot, which is going to limit substantially gene therapy and gene editing. So this is something that's rather new, but we've begun to talk about it, and we think maybe a very nice alternative to the much more complex forms of genetic intervention.
Well, we would love to hear more about that next time, and we're actually going to be spending more time kind of diving into the work that you do and also longevity overall, and how how we can just make adjustments in our life to facilitate that. And whether it's working with companies like you, or I know you've written several articles that people can tap into and learn a little bit more. Ira, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us today.
Thank you for having me. It was really a pleasure, and I look forward to coming back and talking more about it because we're quite passionate about it.
It's so easy to see that you are very passionate about this topic. I can't wait for our next conversation that we'll have in about a month or two, where we get to kind of explore this a little bit more. If you're looking to connect with Ira and learn about all the great work he's doing, you can visit Bioquark. It's BIOQUARK.com. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.